Greetings, friends. This is a short video that will help us to conduct very simple kind of independent samples t-test. An independent samples t-test is a statistical analysis of the differences between two groups. And as you can see right here, there is an actual formula that's used to be able to determine whether the mean score of two groups or the averages between two groups are statistically significantly different. All of this is based on assumptions that are derived from the bell curve that assumes that on any particular distribution or any kind of distribution, there will be people who are more like each other and folks who are more significantly different from the rest of the folks in the group. Either if it was a test, they scored higher. If it was height, they were taller. If it was weight, they were heavier. If they had income, they made more. Or on the other side, same thing with height, weight, income, and grades, and so on. But behind the statistical analysis is this assumption that all groups have individuals that are higher than or less than the mean, or will score higher than or less than the mean score on any particular assessment of their characteristics or their differences. So you would start with a excuse me, a sample. Let's say this was of the scores on a test, and you would then calculate the mean, and the mean would be the average score of the folks who took a particular test, and several folks would score higher, some folks would score less, but generally the distribution of scores should fall to something like this. Then let's say you gave the same assessment to another group and their mean score was higher than the other group. And again, some people scored less and some people scored more on that. Now notice it doesn't tell us what happened in what necessarily the scores of any one particular individual. Let's say this person was in group 2 and they scored a 57, and somebody in the other group scored 57. So all that would mean is that this person, according to this group's standards, was below average, and the person who scored a 57 in group 1 would have been above average. So that difference is important to us when we're doing certain kind of analyses. So what we are wanting to do, and you'll see the importance of this when we actually do the calculations, is we want to know in a certain amount of certainty, we call it a 5% chance, that the differences that we're seeing between the two groups are significantly different. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to do some activities that will be found in your SPSS database, and I'll send those along with this recording. But the actual database that we want to open is in the SPSS folder, and it's called bank loan. It should be bankloans.save. And we're going to examine how likely or unlikely groups are to default on their loan. And we're going to use this SPSS statistical data analysis software package. So if you'd go ahead and open that now, and we want you to open the file that says bankloan.save, bankloan.save. And you can pause this recording now and open it and get to the variable view, which is this view right here. So pause now and get that open and come back to this, and we'll show you how to run a t-test. Okay, welcome back. Now, as we explained before, this is the variable view, and here's all the questions that were asked on this particular survey, and then all the answers were here on the data view. So the first person, their age was 41, the second person, their age was 27, third person was age 40, and so on. And this is how they answered all the questions. Person 1 answered the questions across the horizontal line here. But go back to the variable view. Here are the different questions that were asked, and here are the possible answers that were allowed. If They were asked their age in years. They would just enter that, their age. Level of education, they were given these scores. Did not complete high school degree, some college degree, post-undergraduate degree. Years with current employers, they can put any number they wanted to there. Years at current address, the same as with household income in thousands. Debt to income ratio, credit card debt in thousands, other debt in thousands. Okay. Now the question that most will concern us is this question number 9, because we're going to find out, and this is what bank officers would want to know, what are the characteristics of people who defaulted on their debt? And notice here that there was 2 codes, 0 if they answered no, 1 if they answered yes. And that will be important for us as we conduct this analysis. Okay? Now, to conduct an independent sample t-test, you go up to the top where it says Analyze. You click there. Compare means, and then Independent Samples t-test. Okay? I'll do that again. Analyze, compare means, Independent Samples t-test. After you've done that, you'll get this prompt. And so what we want to do is we're going to compare the age in years of 2 different groups, those who defaulted and those who didn't default on their debt. So to get there, you do this. You take this variable, put it in the bottom under the grouping variables. So the 2 groups we want to compare are those who defaulted on their debt and those who didn't default on their debt. When this prompt comes up, it will look like this. So remember we said that 0 was the group who didn't default on their debt and 1 was the group that did. And what characteristics do we want to compare? Well, we want to see if there's any difference in the folks who, in their age. Were the folks who defaulted on their debt, were they older or younger than the folks who didn't? And was that difference statistically significant? Once you get here, you hit OK. And it will give you this report. Now in this report, the first table has our groups. The people who didn't default on the debt and the people who did. And it says here that we're going to compare their years, age in years. So the mean score, which is the same thing as saying the average age of the people who did not default on the debt, was 35. The mean age of the folks who did previously default on their debt is 33. The N is the number of people in our sample who answered no, and the number of people who answered yes. And since we're dealing with averages, that number doesn't affect us that much, or doesn't affect us at all, actually. Now we can see that the folks who did default on the debt were slightly younger, which makes some sense, doesn't it? You know, sometimes us young folks are a little bit more irresponsible than our elders. The question is that statistically significant? Well, we go down here to this number, here where it says significance. If that number, actually it's right here, this is what we want. If that number is different, is smaller than 0.05, then that difference is statistically significant. This significance here, that's for a different kind of tests, which we really don't need to know in order to be able to do this simple kind of an analysis. So if this number right here is less than 0.05, then there is a difference between these 2 groups, and the difference is significant. Okay? So let's go ahead and do another t-test. Now for this, to do it again, if you want to perform the same kind of test, all you have to do is go up to this icon right here where it says Recall Recently Used Dialogues. That just means recall the test that you previously conducted. You conducted an independent samples t-test. And let's go here, age in years. Remove. And let's see if years with current employer makes a difference. So stop here for a second, and what do you think? Do you think it matters how long somebody's been with their employer? Do you think people who've been with their employer longer will be less likely or more likely to have defaulted on their loan? This one we can keep the same because it's still bank defaults. So, years with current employer. Those who did not default were with their employer 9.5 years, and those who were with an employer, those who did default were with a employer less amount of time. So it seems like it does make a difference how long you are with an employer. Okay, so significant, less than 0.05, yes. Okay, one more. Come back here. How about credit card debt in thousands? Do you think the more you owe, the more likely you would be to default on a debt? Let's take a look. Those who had previously defaulted, credit card debt in thousands, they were $2,400 in debt. Folks who did not previously default had a lower credit card. And again, the significance. So that gives you a basic idea of how to conduct independent samples t-tests. There'll be another document that I'll be sending you that will have another database, and you're going to be conducting similar kind of analyses. I hope this was helpful, and the best to you as you conduct your assignment.